November's been a pretty busy month in terms of baby fur drama, as I'm sure you'd gather from my last video going over fur affinity and their ongoing baby fur standoff. However, there's something that caught my eye when I was researching that situation. I briefly mentioned a journal that was pitching ideas at FA on how to earn back baby fur trust. In the second item, where they recommend the banning of ticket system users, they state that the community suspects a certain user by the handle of Katamara was behind the baby fur mass report wave they recently endured. The evidence behind this claim is that Katamara was apparently running a baby fur hate campaign over Twitter and Instagram. Obviously, seeing a claim like that, I had to go check it out myself to see if their description was accurate. This search would eventually lead me to a small online campaign against popufurs who engage in the baby fur side of the fandom. Now, why am I bringing this up, you may ask? Well, this campaign isn't really sitting right with me, specifically from a fundamental sense. There might be some confusion there, as I've stated time and time again how I don't want to interact with baby fur stuff just shy of it being a last resort. Personally, I believe that if you don't vibe with someone or something, you have every right to be vocal with that displeasure. But I also believe there's a sensible way to do that without needing to celebrate or exaggerate details to make something seem worse than it is, without constantly subjecting yourself to the very thing you so desperately want to avoid. But let's say that's not enough. Let's say that along with voicing your disgust with the community, you decide to create not just a Google document of popular creators in that group, but a small movement towards that group you hold so much vitriol towards. Well, then you'd be in the shoes of Katamara, a furry artist and fursuit maker who has been getting attention for being loudly against not only ABDL, but baby furs as a whole. If you're still not familiar with her, you remember that time a furry decked someone in the face with a megaphone at the beach? Yeah, she was the one who recorded that. While Katamara and I might have a similar stance towards ABDL on a base level, the way she's gone about expressing that stance has been pretty sloppy and reckless, to put it lightly. In this video, I'm going to run you through Katamara's anti-baby fur campaign and the pretty simple mistakes she's made that would shake the credibility of her actions. Actions that once appeared to be bringing awareness to the more irresponsible parts of our fandom, instead turning into an emotion-fueled march with little logical direction. So with that being said, let's start things off by going where her campaigns seem to be most active, Instagram. Going to Katamara's Instagram, the first thing you'll notice is a story containing her DNI, or Do Not Interact list. In the bottom right corner, Katamara makes it clear that she isn't willing to have a discussion concerning any of these topics, and will instantly block you if you fall into any of these categories. You have the usual suspects on the list, such as racists, transphobes, zoophiles, etc. But you probably noticed the very first two items being baby furs and adult baby diaper lovers. As far as D&I lists are concerned, you don't usually see these groups mentioned by name too often. So what led to them being listed here, you may ask? Well, looking further, you can find a diss track towards an unnamed group of baby furs. Given the cover art of this track references both Epstein Island and Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, it sounds like what you would expect.
I need the mock swing.
You mentally ill, you're some messed up fuck. Psych word prescribed 6 to 10 months. Keep your paws off that goddamn street. Stay shitting your pants, but take care of the leaks.
But looking in deeper, it appears that the inciting incident here would be Katamara's removal from a South Californian furry group following a death threat she had made. According to an Instagram story from August 29th, Katamara had called out a number of fur meets in the SoCal area for being pro-LGBT. So they made this pinned story talking on how these meets will probably set out to condemn her because she was removed from one that was led by a baby fur. This is a group she either never mentions by name, or she did and I'm just unable to find a trace of it through her socials. Regardless, She was supposedly banned following these messages made over on Twitter, saying that she doesn't see BabyFurs not seeking help as humans and prays for their imminent death. She says this was in response to BabyFurs redistributing cup porn, but no context or evidence is given to show that this was the case, so you're kinda left to either take her word on it or not. This trend continues later on in the story as well, making it hard to tell if this is someone truly trying to spread awareness of horrible BabyFurs, or just a disgruntled furry scorned by the BabyFurs of the SoCal area. I say this because, as you go on, no real concrete evidence is shown to support the people in these fur meets being confirmed predators or close friends of ABDL supporters. These accusations are all just pure testimony. We're never told who these predators are, but we'd be safe to assume that they're probably just BabyFurs, as she continues on, using the community label interchangeably with pedophile. In reference to the higher-ups of the group, she says, "These admins will attempt to claim that they do not support or condone pedophilia. I am willing to bet they will dance around the word ABDL. They will say that they don't condone pedophilia and that I am a threat, but they will not be able to condemn ABDL because they offer spaces for these types of people." So, based on this, you would probably be pretty safe in assuming that Katamara sees ABDL and BabyFurs in the same vein as pedophilia. And while that's untrue on a technical level, that won't stop her from incorrectly associating the two, something that becomes more and more detrimental as we go forward. One of the more glaring issues that would impede on Katamara's movement would be their insistence on firing blindly into the crowd. If you're this far into the video, I would assume you're already pretty familiar with what ABDL and BabyFurs are, because in case you're not aware of what differentiates ABDL from being a pedophile, it's a simple case of what the arousing force is. For pedophiles, that would be wanting to fornicate with a minor, someone who is incapable of consent. For BabyFurs and those who engage in ABDL, the arousal will primarily be produced from either role-playing as a baby or simply wearing diapers. To put it simply, they don't inherently want to have sex with kids. They simply want to be kids. If that line of logic sounds a bit too familiar, it might start to click why I myself prefer to steer clear from this portion of the community. I'm sure there are nice and kind people in it, but I just don't fuck with the practice personally. That being said, Katamara doesn't have that same understanding, as instead of giving a general overview of what BabyFurs are and why that disgusts her, she instead spends the entirety of the campaign painting every BabyFur as an unequivocal pedophile. This sentiment can be seen on full display as we go through an infographic she made and posted onto her socials on August 27th. Off the bat, the infographic starts with the issue of simplifying the BabyFur label. The only reason simplifying it in this case is an issue is due to just how broadly it's used as a community label, something that actually leads into a critique I have with the community, where the BabyFur label houses furries who are either into ABDL, age-regressing furries seeking community, as well as those who just engage with more child-oriented activities for whatever reason, sexual or otherwise. So while these groups are usually divided inside of the community, those who don't engage with the group won't see or really bother to become acquainted with that division. Instead, we'll see it all as one subgroup, because there aren't any labels for those subgroups. They're all BabyFurs, regardless of what identifies them as one. Hence why things like ABDL and age regression get conflated when BabyFurs are discussed by people on the outside. However, Katamara uses their own incomplete definition to paint BabyFurs as this cabal-style group in the fandom who will blackmail any who speak up against them. Starting with, BabyFurs will often claim to be age regressors, and use that to justify predatory behavior, condemning you if you speak out against them. It's small bits like this that can sully legitimate points, such as her further emphasizing the difference between age regression and age play later on in this page. But on the next page, we'll see the start of a common theme, painting the baby fur community as the ones responsible for all the grooming and predators in the furry fandom, saying, it's okay because they're not hurting anyone. They are. The furry fandom has a substantial grooming problem. This is by and large due to the fact that we foster a space where adults can sexualize infants, toddlers, and children through baby fur not safe for work accounts, pretending to be babies during sex, and consuming illustrated furry CP, often referred to as cub, not to mention that ABDLs and baby furs, despite mostly claiming to be 18+, do a generous amount of the grooming. Quick spoiler, they just state this without any form of information to back it up. I would assume it doesn't need to be said, but being a baby fur isn't a prerequisite to being a groomer, nor does it make you more likely to become one, because believe it or not, we've had furries who have groomed and taken advantage of kids without being baby furs. There's no need to demonize an entire sub-community when even with them gone, there'd still be predators lurking in both the shadows and in broad daylight in the fandom. And it kinda sucks I have to correct this, because there is a point to be made here. I do think that cub porn, which is essentially just furry version of lolly, does play a role when talking about people becoming desensitized to the sexualization of minors and infantile activities. Despite diapers not being inherently sexual or exclusive to children, I think that adults should avoid wearing kink-connected gear when it's known that there are children in that venue space. I also think that sexualizing the behavior of infants shouldn't be considered an acceptable fetish or kink, but because kink and age regression are both put under the same sub-community, when you call the entirety of the community groomers and pedophiles, you catch the very people you're looking out for in the crossfire. This is my main issue with Katamara's work. There's not a scope here, no aiming. She's just hip-firing off of partial information and hoping for the best. I mean, sure, she said age regressors should stop using the baby fur label. So if those furry age regressors who've made friends among the community didn't get the memo and got caught by a bullet of hers, well, this is this and that is that. This is why, despite how averse I am to baby furs, I'm not gonna label the entire community as pedophiles. Because for me to be able to do that properly, I'd need a fuck ton of substantial proof to back me up. Generalizations ain't cutting it here. This is something that Katamara doesn't understand, instead basing their campaign on anecdotes and presumptions such as some will try to draw a comparison between mersuiting and pup play with ABDL. The difference is that mersuit communities will quickly kick people out of their spaces for consuming feral porn. Cub porn in the baby fur, diaper fur, ABDL communities is celebrated, however, and spread around with no remorse. All baby furs I've encountered who claim to be safe for work have secretly ingested this in private. Now, this is followed by the baby furs wearing diapers in public with kids around as an example, which I believe helps your case here. But the statement they're making just makes me question mersuiting communities alongside them. Who's to say all mersuiting communities are actively gatekeeping their ranks? And since we're talking about communities, what led to Katamara running this campaign again? Well, she reiterates it here. The reason she started this crusade was because they had been kicked from several SoCal fur meets for what they list here as yucking people's yums. To Katamara's credit, I can empathize with them getting booted from their local group because they voiced their discomfort with what members were getting off to. However, this is all we're really shown, so again, this kinda just leaves you having to take her word for it if you don't feel like digging deeper into the SoCal furry scene. The final page of this infographic is a call to action, calling on people to be vocal with their baby fur discomfort, portraying the diaper wearers as a terrifying horde who will paint you as a homophobic bigot for opposing them, which, speaking from experience, not a baby fur exclusive thing here. But being real for a moment, I feel this ending page captures what makes me so disgruntled with this infographic. Like I said, Katamara has a bad habit of spraying and praying in this campaign. So as expected, the tone for this thing is all over the place. She spends a good chunk of this defining the difference between ABDL and age regression. but then goes back and forth between treating baby furs like either predators or playground bullies. They're predators who are normalizing sexualizing children, but they're also spooky and scary because they'll make you feel bad and call you mean names for being against them. Some might disagree, but if there truly was an entire subgroup of child predators in diapers here, don't you think there should be a bit more urgency than what's being portrayed here? I mean, fuck them feeling uncomfortable. I'd call for them behind bars at that point. But the urgency isn't something that's really felt here. That could be due to the official campaign hashtag missing a letter, but I think Katamara might not have thought this through all too well, which is unfortunate because there are those salvageable talking points in their posts, but it's dragged down by the fact that there's barely meat on the bone in terms of proof. If you're truly aiming to expose an entire community as pedos and predators, you'd need to establish the pattern of behavior here. As justified as they might be, one or two examples aren't going to cut it, as they can easily be dismissed as a community outlier. But surely that was just due to Instagram's image limit and not Katamara lacking the ability to fit everything into a clear and concise format. Surely she'll be able to fully list the shortcomings of the BabyFur community in a format without speech limitations, right? Well, we'll get to that in a moment, because there would be more to come after this infographic made the rounds. From the 26th to the 30th of September, BabyFurCon 2024 was set to take place in Santa Cruz, California. As the name gives away, this was a furry convention oriented towards baby furs. I'll admit, hearing about this convention definitely put me on high alert, as hearing the idea of a baby fur oriented con, I fully expected there to be at least one horror story in a similar vein to the feces related ones I heard about prior. However, that alert pretty quickly turned to indifference when I found out that the convention was actually adults only, mostly quelling my main concern about the convention. This didn't appear to be enough for someone like Katamara though. Someone we've established sees baby furs as nothing more than pedophiles. So on September 14th, Katamara would post a campaign most ingenious, an attempt to stop Hotel Paradox from hosting BabyFurCon. She would make an Instagram post containing the website address, the physical address, and phone number of the hotel, even providing a pre-written letter for her audience to copy and paste at the hotel in hopes of getting BabyFurCon canceled. Surely I don't need to point out how, regardless of its publicity, posting the physical location of a convention venue and following it up with language of, "We can get hotel management's attention," isn't the brightest idea. She says Rainforest couldn't find a place to run, and that started with emails that call to change. I understand what they're getting at here, but this portrayal of what happened to Rainforest just isn't being truthful. The reason Rainforest couldn't find a place to run was because the content in those letters spoke of how horridly the 2015 convention went, something that the hotel it occurred at would be able to confirm for other hotels. And while it's what we mostly remember the con for, it wasn't solely the presence of baby furs and the shit-filled diapers some left behind that put Rainforest under. There was also rampant issues of drug possession, sexual assault, as well as a handful of convention attendees physically destroying the Hilton venue. Also, the past 8 years of the convention staff never keeping their attendees in check. Compare that to the contents of Katamara's letter, one that essentially reads, "The furry fandom doesn't support baby furs. If you support BabyFurCon, you're saying that your hotel is in a safe place." And it's no wonder why the convention went on, regardless of the efforts of her and her following. But never mind the fact she's very lucky no one pulled anything drastic at the physical venue due to her post. But did she not take a moment to consider that maybe the hotel knew what they were getting themselves into? I'm pretty certain whoever organized the contract between the convention and the hotel had to find out what a baby fur was in one way or another. There's no way a hotel would just hold a convention and just not know what they're signing up for. So, of course, contacting them as a member of the furry community was most likely going to do jack shit. This didn't stop Katamara though. As the day the convention began, she would post a change.org petition calling for the Marriott brand hotel to sever their contract with BabyFurCon in the upcoming years. I couldn't find an archive link to the petition, or any link to it for that matter, as it appears that the petition was taken down by Change.org moderation, essentially leaving her campaign against BabyFurCon unsuccessful, as the convention came and went, surprisingly without an issue. But this wouldn't deter Katamara whatsoever. The BabyFur menace had to be stopped, so Katamara would go on to create one of the most plentiful but terrifying objects in the known internet. A callout in Google Docs. But before we talk about that, you might be asking yourself, how did people even come across this doc? How did it gain any traction? Well, Katamara advertised a document warning people of popular furries in the fandom who happened to be BabyFurs. A video that was posted to Instagram, but it got most of its traction over on TikTok. It's also the most blatant example of blind firing, as most of the video consists of multiple different furries popping up on screen, with multiple accusations popping up at random intervals, ranging from being a baby fur to grooming kids. Only to be followed up by royalty-free ukulele. Needless to say, the editing of this TikTok not only makes light of the situation, but comes off as rather tone-deaf when you're making the accusation that the people you've listed on screen are either baby furs or getting off around kids. Based on the video itself, you might be asking yourself who did which. That is a problem. When talking about a video with the goal of pointing out heinous people among our ranks, vague should be the last word used to describe it. Not to mention how easy it is to attach a life-ruining accusation to the wrong person because of this video. Take Ash Coyote for example, someone who has at no point fetishized CSA, but if you only watched this video, you would probably assume she did based on her image popping up the same time as that very allegation. But I'm sure we can overlook all of that because surely the Google Doc itself doesn't undermine itself in a similar fashion, right? The PopuFur ABDL baby fur involvement block list is a list that's maintained by Katamara and two other people who don't appear to be named. The list includes furries with substantial followings who are adult baby diaper lovers, aka baby furs, or vocal supporters. This list doesn't include age regressors or exclusively adult diaper fetishists unless infantilism is involved in their sexual activity. So the DL is fine, but the AB has to go. A bit of an odd distinction, but let's keep going. The goal of this list is to outline people who engage in behavior that sexualizes infantilism, or promote behavior that sexualizes infantilism, so furry fandom members uncomfortable with these communities can steer clear of them. They have this section to define what baby furs are, but it just links back to Katamara's flawed infographic, so that isn't really much help in telling the reader what they are. Then we come down to the common arguments debunked section, which starts off by reading, "But if baby furs are pedophiles, then furries must be zoophiles." Can't say I've heard anyone make this argument before, but neither of these accusatory statements are absolute truths either way. What consenting adults do alone is none of your business. I mean, yeah, if consenting adults are shitting in diapers without making it anyone else's problem, why should someone be forced to care about that? I can call them gross or freaky from a distance and go about my day without having to make it my problem. Purity. I've got nothing there. I genuinely hate that phrase with a passion. These and an array of other arguments are debunked here and backed with scientific and psychological research. They say this, but then go on to say that this section should be completed and uploaded in a week. That was said in October. It's been 2 months and they've yet to debunk these arguments, instead resorting to the assertion that baby furs will get off to dressing in a baby diaper, pretending to have intercourse with a baby, and looking at drawings of babies for sexual gratification. It's an assertion that hinges off of you already hating baby furs and not wanting to look deep enough into them to realize that only the first part of this has technical truth to it. As I've already explained, they don't all pretend to have sex with babies. The majority get their sexual gratification solely from pretending to be a baby, wearing diapers, etc. And again, the fact I have to state, not all, the majority don't. That's where the problem lies. They don't all do it, but some most certainly do. The point I'm making here is that I don't need to make things up and create broad generalizations to justify why I dislike the practice. And I don't need to rely on my audience blindly listening to me to get away with not having the concrete evidence I said I did, while also insinuating that anyone who questions me is a pedophile sympathizer. But moving on, we have the list of requirements for the type of people included in this list. The baby fur essentially has to be a poppy fur in some regard to land a spot on this list, though it also states that they have to be someone who is primarily known for their tamer content, such as Beta Ada Delota being a popular furry for his safe for work videos on YouTube. But a much smaller percentage of people know him for his ABDL content, or you can just ignore all that and just put them on there because they're a predator. They put these restrictions in place so they could specifically shed light on influential figures in the fandom who have the power to spread misinformation concerning baby furs and ABDL, while ignoring Katamara going on to do just that not even a section ago. But despite that, they also want to put a spotlight on those who are quieter about the fetish, but don't deserve the support. So even if a safe for work creator does all they're able to make sure their adult baby fur content isn't accessible to the younger fans of their safe for work content, it doesn't matter. Let's just spread it around for them, I guess. This person is keeping their fetish behind closed doors like a sensible adult. Let's open the door for them and blame them for its spreading. I mean, it's their fault for engaging in adult activities responsibly. Now, bringing the final disclaimers, the list exists solely for safety reasons, so your best course of action is to avoid engagement with these individuals. The list creators do not condone harassment of any of these individuals. Please avoid interaction if able. What about the list creator who condoned harassing a hotel until they dropped a convention? I just don't understand it. All throughout this anti-BabyFur campaign they've headed, it's been a constant stream of Katamara shooting herself in the foot every time she takes a step. If you already hate baby furs, chances are you're not going to care what's being said about them as long as you don't have to deal with them yourself. But the way I see it, if you're going to head this entire campaign to run a group out of the fandom, why would you constantly undermine yourself the entire way through? They say they don't condone the harassment of baby furs, but Katamara is willing to barrage a hotel until they drop a baby fur con they have a contract with. They go on to say that this list does not suggest that each of these people caused the same or similar amount of harm. And in all fairness, the list itself doesn't. The video advertising the list does. She makes constant assertions about baby furs to fit her narrative without actually providing the substantial proof to support it. Proof that, mind you, very well exists. It is out there. Hell, I've talked about some of it in the past. And even then, there's no proper organization here. Everyone is listed in alphabetical order. So the people who are put on this list are all over the place in terms of deviancy. What I mean by that is that some of them being baby furs doesn't even seem to be the most damning thing about most of the people on this list. It just makes the list seem unfocused and unorganized. Even more so as she bogs down her point by attaching people either for a lesser charge or ones that are much worse than just being a baby fur. Again, using Ash Coyote as an example, there's someone who Katamara knows isn't even a baby fur, but lists her here just because she believes Ash spread a large amount of misinformation about baby furs and ABDL. And by misinformation, she means that she equated being a baby fur to age regressing. Also, she didn't talk about how evil baby furs were enough. The only evidence that Katamara based this on was a video Ash did where they went over misconceptions about ABDL and baby furs. A video that portrays itself as debunking myths about ABDL, despite 2 of the 4 myths just being opinions. I can't say I wholeheartedly agreed with the video, but after watching it, I can't exactly say I see why she's been put on the list alongside the likes of Crowsperch, someone who's made cup porn, and Doppio Amore, someone who, yes, is a baby fur, but is also someone with more than 30 testimonies of sexual assault and worse being alleged towards them, a number of which unrelated to him being a baby fur. He was just a fucking creep regardless, allegedly. Katamara could have made a compelling case that the baby fur community has a number of repulsive people among their ranks, and should be more open about taking steps to deal with them accordingly. But instead, she decided to label everyone as compliant witnesses who may have committed the same crime as well, allegedly. And now you're probably wondering where we can even go from here. What more could Katamara have done that I feel needs to be critiqued? Well, the last thing we're going to talk about is the actual reason this all ended up on my desk in the first place. Remember that video by Ash Coyote I brought up earlier? Well, she actually mentions Katamara's movement in her video, furs condemning baby furs.
Now recently, there's been this movement, furs condemning baby furs, trying to push baby furs out of convention spaces by pressuring hotels to stop hosting these events. They're using fear-based language, painting baby furs as dangerous. But in reality, it's all just about discomfort and misunderstanding. It's just another form of gatekeeping. And honestly, aren't we all here because we were tired of being told that we were too weird for mainstream society?
While I disagree with her ending sentiment, as I'm just here because Sly Cooper made teenage me feel some type of way, she isn't wrong with her assessment of Katamara's campaign being one of fear-mongering rather than actually focusing on her mission of showing why baby furs in themselves are bad. As one can expect, Katamara didn't take very kindly to their portrayal in this video, deciding to pull the worst defense one can do when it comes to dealing with criticism from YouTubers. She filed a copyright claim against Ash's video. Now, the reason for this would actually get added in an update to the document we just talked about, saying, the video has been copyright striked because Ash Coyote willingly neglected to credit an artist whose artwork they used in the video. The artist in question was Katamara. Ash showed artwork of what I believe to be Katamara's Change.org campaign, as well as the post of Katamara calling onto their followers to call the hotel hosting BabyFurCon en masse, so she would send a copyright claim because her artwork was not credited in Ash's video, and no other reason at all. My artwork was uncredited despite the uploader's ideals of representation for artists in the fandom, and then shared in a defamatory context. I striked it because it was my legal right to do so, and the original means of sharing it was malicious towards me. You've gotta be kidding me. So not only did she strike the video because she wasn't credited, but because Ash showed her art in a way that she didn't like. Ignoring the fact that this just makes Katamara seem even more hypocritical when they complain about their art being put in a malicious light, but will willingly spread photos of her opposition to do the exact same. This explanation only shows that Katamara is pretty inept when it comes to the sphere of commentary on YouTube, as normally most people will avoid utilizing YouTube's copyright system unless personal information is involved. It's not a weapon to use against people you don't like because they don't agree with your views. So this would lead to Ash Coyote sharing this information with their following on Blue Sky. A large majority of them warning Ash about how the copyright system can be abused by malicious actors to receive a YouTuber's personal information with the intent of doxing them, something that Katamara would clarify they didn't plan on doing. But this just shows the issue with the way she handled her campaign. Who's to say it wasn't her intention? Because Katamara headed a campaign that labeled any and all baby furs and those friends with them as pedophiles and pedo enablers, rather than researching what the group consists of and explaining their distaste and hatred from there, why would she expect them to take her at her word now? Instead, they just dug into Katamara's wrongdoing, such as pointing out a video she uploaded on YouTube where, during the video, you can visibly see a dildo in the background. Something that's only shown as damning due to her point of protecting the kids from kink. Granted, this is the equivalent of fighting fire with a Capri Sun, but the point still stands that her handling of her anti-BabyFur campaign led to the majority of Ash's following seeing them as a fearmonger and nothing more. So much so that they saw no issue assisting Ash when they opened a GoFundMe campaign to cover any financial hurdles that would arise should this make its way into a courtroom. A fundraiser that had a goal of $1,000, but would reach triple that in no time at all. Even Skiggles, the current head of Fur Affinity, would donate a hefty amount of support to Ash, something rather notable as FA was busy dealing with their own baby fur related crisis at that moment. But in due time, Ash's video would be back up. I can't confirm whether Katamara's artwork was blurred out before or after the strike was inflicted, but it's safe to say that Katamara striking Ash's video only went on to tarnish her campaign's intentions even further. As far as this campaign goes, the copyright strike Katamara made against Ash is the latest thing to have happened. There was a small update made to the list, adding a few others who vary in terms of vulgarity, but regardless of how damning those individuals are, the reputation of the list as a whole has been sufficiently muddied. And the worst part of it is that Katamara caused this through her own actions. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Viewers of mine probably couldn't give two fucks about BabyFurs. I'd assume most probably share a similar mindset to mine where I don't want to approach this stuff, but I don't really care what they're doing as long as they do it in the proper space. A mindset where if I wasn't making videos like this, BabyFurs probably wouldn't be a thought on my mind. But I made this video to show more people an example of what happens when you base your disdain against a group on nothing more than simple generalizations and rhetoric that, while sounding reasonable, is backed on nothing more but an irrational hatred against a group. But in the case of BabyFurs, it's a case where you can very easily outline why you hate or despise a community or group. I explained why I don't interact with the BabyFur community just fine throughout this video, and I did so by outlining what the concept of it consisted of, how even though they aren't pedophiles, the whole concept of role-playing as a baby or getting off to diapers isn't something I fuck with. And notice how I didn't need to wrongly label the entire community as pedos to get that point across. Katamara is an example of someone who is incapable of this. Instead of laying the concept out, she feels the need to exaggerate and lie, all while undermining her own campaign by handling it in the most insufferable and stubborn method possible. Katamara, if you've watched this far in the video, oh, who am I kidding? Why would she? Word to advice to the general crowd. You can just say you don't like stuff. If that's how you want to go about handling yourself, that's all good. But if you're going to be vocal and project that feeling for whatever reason, you can do it civilly. And you don't have to exaggerate it just so your reason feels like it's worthy enough. Just live your life or whatever. I'm pretty bad when it comes to wording advice. But that's it for this video. Take care, and until the next one. Oh wait, this is my last video of 2024. Huh. Happy New Year, you guys. I hope you guys are doing well. 2025 is going to be a pretty good year over here at LagoVirt HQ. But until then, stay safe out there.
Funding for this program was made possible by